Good morning, how you going? It's about 6:30 in the morning and I'm at a place called Big Rocky. Just arrived. Big Rocky is a place not too far from my home, and as you can imagine it's very rocky. It's a place I've come to a couple of times to try and shoot, and unfortunately the weather has really hampered my efforts. It's just poured on me both times, so I'm hoping this time I can actually get a shot in, so we'll see how we go. Well, looks like I've done the same thing again. I've ended up down here and the weather is not great. At least it's not raining, but there is an awfully large amount of cloud cover everywhere, and it has been raining. So I really feel like that I could be out of luck this morning for a brilliant sunrise. So why don't we use this opportunity to have a little chat about the 7 photography mistakes that I made and how you can avoid the same thing. Because I'm no different than anybody else. I'm human. I've made a lot of mistakes. And sometimes other people's mistakes are a great way to learn what not to do and to help you learn what to do and get there faster. So let's do that. Let's unpack that. And I'm still going to try and shoot something, by the way, as I do that. So I'm going to find a place to set up, and then we'll start talking about the 7 mistakes. All right, I think I found a composition that I'm happy with. I'm always drawn these seascape shots when there's lots of really cool foreground. So I found a spot where, there's rocks everywhere, so this place is cool as it is. And the water's running in, the tide is quite high. So, just saw the waves splashing behind me there. So I'm just gonna be careful where I set up because I don't want to get all wet. So let's go over there and have a look and just see if we can find a spot that is going to work for us without us getting really wet, because it's not what we want at all. So I might go around this way. Just an incredible spot. You can see why it's called Big Rocky. There's another spot called Little Rocky over the other side, but I think I really prefer this spot for photography. You just got to be careful because there's just rocks everywhere. So here we go. Okay. Wow, all right. I think this might work. This might work really nicely. It's just going to be a little bit awkward finding somewhere to put my bag and my feet. And sometimes you just got to watch for a bit to see what the waves do. Well, I think I found one of the most challenging spots to try and do photography and vlogging from at the same time. Because boy, oh boy, there's not many places for me to put the camera without my worry of it getting, somewhere, ending up somewhere in the drink. But if I put this, let's just work down here for a tick and see what happens. But yeah, it's pretty difficult. So if I pop you there, maybe that will work. Let's have a look. Alrighty. There we go, that sort of works, doesn't it? Okay. Wow, that's a big wave coming in. I just need to be careful. I don't know, haven't seen the biggest of waves come in yet. No, that was all right. Looks like it's going to be pretty consistent. Just going to get my app and double check the tide. So there's my first mistake. And that's not even one of the 7 that I was going to share with you, but let me tell you, that is an important thing. When you're shooting a location like this, if you haven't checked the tides, and you're going to be on the rocks where there's rough seas, you want to make sure you know whether the tide's coming up or going down, because I could be here for an hour. Yeah, we're right at high tide and it's still got a little bit to go, and it's a very high tide, so it's cause for concern. But there is some colour coming out right now, so I'm going to quickly set up my camera and try and grab the shots. Alright, this is very, very challenging conditions. So if something doesn't go crazy wrong here, I'll be very surprised. Wow, got to keep an eye on those waves as well. So if we get this clamped into there. Yeah, I'm in a bit of a weird situation here. Anyway, alright, got the camera into the L bracket. I'm sort of perched up on some pretty, I don't know, minimal footing would be the way to put it. Just get these tripod legs out to the size where they'll fit across these rocks. And I don't think I'll stay in this position for long, so let's just get the other leg out on this one. There we go. And quickly compose and get a shot. The thing I love about here is the sun is just about to come out, which is just insanely good. Oh, and there's moving water. I guess the biggest issue is I don't have my glasses on. They're in my bag and I don't feel like I've got time to get them. So this is where you really got to have faith in your camera focus system. So I'm just going autofocus. I've touched the screen to get it to focus about, 2/3 up the rocks in front of me. I'm going to just make sure my shutter release is on. That's on. And then I'm at f11, which is probably a bit faster than I would like, because I would like a bit more movement in the water, and it's at 1/10 of a second. Now at 1/10 of a second I'll probably get a tiny little bit, not much. Now I've just got to wait for a big wave. All the big waves have gone. There you go. So that'll actually give me time to get a filter out, which might just slow that down a bit. So let's see if we can get this filter holder on. Boy oh boy, very precarious. Let's go through. Yeah, it looks like the biggest waves aren't going to reach me up here, but you just never know. I've been soaked before when I've been out and about. Alright, so you just never know. You've got to be really careful. Alright, this is my 0.9 grad. I'm just popping in there now as the sun comes up, just so I can try and just settle the sky down just a little bit, and then I'm just going to wait for a good wave to come in. I'm now getting 1/4 of a second, which is better. If I go to f16, which is not ideal, I can get half a second. I'll go to 1/3 a second at f13, but I do need a bigger wave. It looks like a bigger wave is coming in now, which is good. Unfortunately, I've just got to try and trying to just get the composure, the composition. I'm thinking 24mm is about right. Oh, here comes a really good wave. Okay, here we go. Yeah, some good ones coming in now, and there's some colour in the sky as well. I guess the good thing about that slightly faster shutter speed is I can take several shots for each wave, and I'm going to get some movement. There's just some waterfalls off the rocks as well. That was a beauty, absolute beauty. And here comes another one. Oh wow, and the light is just looking spectacular. Alright, I think I might have risked my life long enough. Let's just have a look and just make sure the exposure's right. There's got to be something pretty epic in there. I might just change my composure slightly to a wider view, and I need to do something with this remote. Was doing something funny, so let's just check it's working now. No. Sometimes this wireless remote, for some weird reason, gets stuck on, and I don't know why. Alright, so I've gone to a wider composition. I'm just going to once again wait for those good waves to come in, and then I'm going to shoot a few more. I'm at f13 1/3 of a second, so it's probably giving me a little bit of movement. I'll stick the short lookers on in a second, have a look. The biggest issue is the sun. The sun came up about 10 minutes ago, although I couldn't see it because of the cloud. But there's a break above the clouds now where the sun's coming out and the beams are just looking just gorgeous is all I can say. So I'm just trying to grab those whilst I've got the opportunity, but I really need some more big waves to come. It's just settled right down. All right. Well, that was pretty epic, wasn't it? Wow. Sometimes things can move pretty fast. All right. So let's have a chat about mistake number one. Well, I already said mistake number one was probably not checking the tides, and that is very dangerous, of course, when it comes to something like this sort of area. That would definitely be mistake number one. But I'm going to say mistake number one for me was always not checking my settings before I started shooting. Now you can rock up to a location like this. It can be pretty rush, which it was this morning, because the tide's coming in, the sun was moving, everything's moving pretty quickly. I didn't have a lot of room. And if your camera's not set up, then you're in trouble. So what I do is before I start a shoot, before I pack the camera bag, before I leave home, I have a checklist that I go through. That checklist is an acronym that I've created called firmware. And each letter stands for something. So F is making sure autofocus is back on, I is setting my ISO back to the base, R is making sure it's on raw, M is metering mode, making sure I'm in matrix, W is my white balance, A is for aperture priority, make sure I've put it back into aperture priority. The next R is to make sure that my remote has good batteries in it because it goes flat. It's a wireless one, but it does chew through the batteries. And then the final E is that my exposure comp is set back down to 0 value. So that's my checklist that I use. So I just quickly do firmware, means I remember everything, and then I can just bring my camera out when I get to the location to know that everything is set up. Wow, that's tide's really coming in now. All right, mistake number two is that I don't get to location on time. This is something I've done many, many times. Thinking, the sun rises at 6:30, I'll just get there at 6:15, and the best light is done with. So always try and get there an hour before sunrise if you want to get the best shot. And mistake number two leads into mistake number three, and that is rushing. So anytime you've really got to rush, you're probably not going to think clearly, and this is why it's so important that you have, a really in-depth knowledge of where every setting is on your camera, and you're really confident in using your tripod and your remote, and you're not having to think about that stuff, because if stuff is happening and it's real fast, you're going to miss the shot. All right, mistake number four, not putting enough interest into my composition. I've been shooting a long time, and it sort of starts to become more of a natural thing, second nature, finding good, interesting foreground, get interesting leading lines, S lines leading out, movement in the water. After a while that just becomes second nature, but it wasn't second nature in the beginning. So, I found that my first, I think Henry Cartier says your first 10,000 photos are your worst. I would have to agree with that. So, until you sort of get a real eye for it, consider your composition every time you set up. Have a look at what's there, what's going to draw the eye in, what foreground is interesting, what's going to create depth, is there movement in the water, how is it going to come to life when you take the shot. Just like that, the water's coming up here, going to get wet feet. All right, I'm just going to get another shot whilst I'm here. I think this is a beautiful bit of colour. The sun and the clouds are just working really nicely together. So another quick shot before I give you the fifth tip, because I need to sit down and talk to you about that one. All right, that looks beautiful. All right, let's take that shot. Let's just get the focus about. A lot of people ask me where I focus. About 2/3 up the foreground quite often. Depends where you're shooting. I was at f13, which is nice. f11 will give you something similar. And I'm not going to get a slow enough shutter speed now to give me any water movement. but I'm shooting into the sun, so I just need to be really careful about that shooting into the sun effect, because it is going to ruin my exposure if I don't keep an eye on it. So I'm at minus 1.3 at the moment and it's still blowing out, so I'm gone to -2. It looks ridiculously dark on the screen and it's still flashing. Nearly lost my camera then. Alrighty. And I may not get the sun to not blow out. Now that's okay if you're not printing the photo. If you're printing the photo, the last thing you want is blown highlights, because it just shows up as pure white. Anyway, I'll move this away before it falls in the water, and we'll talk about mistake number 4. Alright, it's actually mistake number 5 that I made and so many people make, and you may be making the same mistake, and that's actually worrying about what other people think. You know, art is a very subjective thing, and it's easy to get knocked down and feel, you know, a lack of confidence if people are telling you that your photo's no good, or you know, you put your image on a social media page and it doesn't get as many likes as somebody else's. You know, so as soon as you listen to what other people say, or you compare yourself to others, you're probably going to, that is a losing battle. You know, that is like a race to the bottom. And so I did do that in the beginning. I really wanted to make sure I was popular and my photos were popular, and I worked really hard at trying to get people's approval. And then I worked out, you know what, it actually doesn't matter. If you just do what's important to you, what you enjoy doing, don't worry about what somebody else thinks about your photos, whether they think they're great or not. Just focus on what you enjoy doing, and if you enjoy it and you like looking at it, then it's a great photo. Alright, time to pack this gear up. That sun has definitely now gone pretty crazy. It's right up now. There's more clouds, so it's going to get blocked, but I'll pack this up, and then what we'll talk about on the way back to the car is mistake number 6 and mistake number 7. Alright, that's done. It's starting to get hot now. Alright, the next one is gas. And I don't mean indigestion. I'm talking about gear acquisition syndrome. And we've all got it, we've all had it, right? Just buying too much gear. Thinking that the latest, greatest gear is going to give us a better photo. And the reality is that, unfortunately, it doesn't matter what camera you've got, there's some things that money can't buy. For example, composition technique, you know, locations. I suppose it can, you can travel there, but you know, having the knowledge to be able to scope out good locations. Gear is not going to help you with that. So, in fact, I think what I find with most times I run a workshop is the biggest hurdle for most people is trying to get their head around their new gear. Or trying to decide what lens out of 12 lenses that they brought. Like, really? How many lenses do you need on a photography shoot? So, gear acquisition syndrome, or GAS as I like to call it, is very, very dangerous and will hamper your creativity because you're too busy either focused on working out how to buy the next piece of gear or working out what to do with the gear that you've got. So you'll end up in a state of confusion. So stop buying stuff. Now, on a side note, here's why you check the tides. I'll show you real quickly. There's the water there, and there's the water there, and this here goes underwater at high tide. So, you know, I'm not far off of it, but that's the risk that you take. All right, let's talk about mistake number 7. And that is a mistake that we've all made many times, me included. In fact, I think I became a bit of a sunrise and a sunset snob. And that is, you know, only coming out in what you think is going to be ideal conditions. You know, with all these apps and things, it's great. We can check the weather, we can see what the cloud level is going to be. But the reality is it's not always right. And sometimes it's those conditions that give us something completely different and something unique. So I always say, you know, use that as a guide, but really just get out there and shoot, you know, don't worry about what the conditions are. And even if you rock up to a scene and it's overcast and it's drizzly, just set up. Back in 2013, I caught an aurora australis over the Hazard Mountains in Tasmania, and for the previous 2 hours it was cloudy and it was raining on us. It would have been easy to pack up and go home, but we stuck it out. We stuck it out until the clouds parted, and not only did I get the aurora australis over the Hazard Mountains, I also got the Milky Way in the same shot. Pretty incredible when you think about it. Just because those conditions might not have been ideal was not a good reason not to be there. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this this video and me sharing the 7 mistakes that I've made. In the comments down below, share with me, what mistakes have you made that you think others could learn from. Let's get a bit of a conversation going down below. What mistakes have you made that you've really, made sure you don't do in the future because it cost you a good photo, or it's something that it stopped you from going out doing photography or whatever. Love to hear from you. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. And until the next time, make sure you get out there and you take some photos. See ya.